Hey everyone, you're live with Necee. I am your host, Opal Bailey, and my guest today is Mark Patten. He is the 2017 Regional Campaign Chairman of March and Dimes. Welcome, Mark.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you, Opal.
How you been doing?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate your opportunity to come on board and talk a little bit about March of Dimes and the great things that we're doing.
Well, thank you very much for coming. So can you go ahead and start us off and let us know what is March of Dimes?
Well, March of Dimes is one of our oldest charities that has been around in the United States. It goes all the way back to FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he was a victim of polio. And one of the things that he recognized was that the government was really lousy at solving big, complex problems like that, and especially getting consistent financial backing and money in order to do the research to solve problems like that. So he encouraged some business leaders at the time to stand up a charity. And that charity started out as March of Dimes. And it was literally kids and people going out and doing walks and then collecting dimes in order to eradicate polio at the time. And as a result of that, polio was almost eliminated from the face of the earth. In fact, today, at that time, FDR himself had some of the impact of having polio as a child. But also 21,000 kids a year at that time were, in the United States alone, were victims of polio. And today, there has not been a single case in the United States. In fact, there's only 3 countries in the world that have polio, and that's Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nigeria. And there was only 74 reported cases in the entire world. And that was the result of the original start of March of Dimes, was to go out and have a laser focus on one cause, and let's go solve it and fix it. Mm-hmm. And so today, March of Dimes is got that same approach, but they're after, this time, reversing premature birth, and they have been for several years. And so they're focused on how can we help a pregnant mother and have a healthier term for their baby and bring that baby to full term. And it's a great cause, and it's one that's very personally touching to me. I mean, there's basically 3 kinds of people that really get touched by the March of Dimes mission. One is somebody that is like myself and my wife Ellen, who are what's called NICU parents, neonatal intensive care unit parents. We've had a child in the NICU. We've had a premature birth. We know what pain and how challenging that can be. The second is somebody that either works in that environment, like a nurse or a doctor, or somebody that's had a relative or a friend, so knows firsthand the challenge that goes into there. And then the third is what we're trying to do today, is get the word out, is people where we make them understand the importance of this mission and why March of Dimes is still a very relevant charity today, and we're asking for people for support.
So do you consider the research for it has advanced more than it did before?
Oh, absolutely. The March of Dimes effort today has been going on premature birth. Has been going on for several years now, and the big strength that they give is the money that they collect. They collect large amounts of money every year, and they're able to put it to these research organizations. So you don't have just a flash, hey, everybody, let's get together and raise money for premature birth, and then it just kind of fades away every year. And so what that results in is actual centers of research standing up and knowing that they're getting funding in each year, and to be able to consistently go after solutions to these problems. And there's 5 centers in the United States now working on solving the problem of premature birth. And they're taking it from different angles, from the genetics. Is it something that's genetically different from one person to another while they may have a premature birth? Is it environmental, or is it caused by other factors that we just don't know yet? It's funny. We know what causes most animals to go into labor. We've studied them, but it's very, very hard to study a human, especially a pregnant human, and experiment and try to find that. And so we know very little about what causes these premature births, but we certainly know the impacts. There's an impact certainly to the family and by all means to the baby. But there's also an impact to the cost. Premature birth typically can cost hundreds of times more than a regular birth. Some babies that go in the NICU for multiple weeks can cost over $1 million, and that is an impact on the cost of the family, to cost to the health insurance, cost to businesses. It's a great problem to be trying to solve today because there are so many advances. A great example of what March of Dimes has done is, and something that's very close to me, is called surfactant therapy. When a baby is born very young, its lungs haven't developed, and so surfactant is a drug that's only been out for about 20 years. That can actually help develop those lungs rapidly and allow that baby much better chance. And that was the challenge when Ellen and I had Molly. Molly was born in 1992. She was born very early. Ellen was in the hospital 10 weeks before Molly was born. And basically what had happened is we'd had 3 healthy children. And then Molly, when she became pregnant with Molly, at about 20 weeks or so, she started leaking amniotic fluid. So there wasn't enough fluid in her to support the pregnancy. So they immediately put her in the hospital, constant bed rest. She wasn't allowed to move out of that bed at all for 10 weeks. And she and Molly together fought very hard. And but still, she was born about 32, 33 weeks. I forget exactly which it was. And as a result of that, one of the things by that particular problem is that fluid that's inside of the embryonic sac as the baby's developing allows the baby to exercise those lungs and develop them. She didn't have the lungs. And they didn't have things like surfactant therapy like that. So Molly, unfortunately, was one of those babies that went into the NICU and she never came out. We struggled for weeks. They tried all kinds of things, but in the end, we had to make a very hard decision to remove her from life support because she basically had no way to breathe. And today, that would not have happened. And it would not have happened today, most likely because of the research that March of Dimes has funded, as well as many other great organizations, but especially March of Dimes. And so it's a very personal goal for us to get the word out, make people understand why March of Dimes is so important, both for Molly and her memory, but also just for everybody else that's been through that experience.
So how has March of Dimes helped you get through it? Were they with you there every step of the way or at certain times? No,
I mean, mostly March of Dimes support is in the background. They're the ones that are supporting the research that's going into these neonatal intensive care places and helping give the doctors and the nurses, especially, the tools that they need in order to help these small babies survive. I mean, we're talking, it's incredible. If you ever get a chance to tour a NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, I strongly recommend you do that because you see babies 1 and 2 pounds, and everything is on such a miniature scale. And these tremendous medical professionals, I mean, they're heroes. On what they're able to do. And they're using the most advanced tools available in order to help these babies survive in the NICU and come out. And so that's one area, is in the medical area. The second one is helping make sure that premature birth doesn't happen to begin with. So it's researching why. What is it that's causing premature birth? And as a result, what can mothers do to try to prevent that? And so there's some things, and it's just education, smoking, drinking, certain kinds of drug use, but there's also environmental factors that can cause a premature birth. And so it's education, and March of Dimes is out there trying to promote that as well. And then we have some really brand new threats out there that March of Dimes is helping lead the research in. The Zika virus being a great cause that's causing birth defects in these babies. And so all this is where your March of Dimes money goes these days in order to support research and to support in avoiding premature birth, making sure we have healthy term babies, and helping the mothers know how best to get through their pregnancy.
So how do what you went through and Ellen went through, what impact are you wanting to make in our community? Oh,
wow. Well, I mean, part of it's self-therapy, right? If I can even though it's been 25 years now. Molly would have been 25 just last week. It's my way of helping to cope and try to help other families never have to go through the experience we have. I mean, when I think back on it, at that time, I was in the Navy. I was the chief engineer on a nuclear submarine, and we were actually in dock, and we were doing repairs. And so I was working your typical 14-hour days. I mean, my soul life was this tremendously challenging job. And here Ellen was home with 3 kids, 6, 4, and 2, and then pregnant. And suddenly she got into the hospital, and suddenly I found myself, I'm with this insurmountable job and 3 kids at home and my wife in the hospital 20 miles away. And that was for 10 weeks. And I'll tell you right now that 10 weeks is a complete blank in my memory. The stress was so high, I can't really remember nearly everything. I remember friends, family coming to help, but the impact was tremendous. And so, I don't want anybody else to ever have to go through that, not to mention, to actually see and be able to hold Molly and see how wonderful that was, and then to lose her in the end. Mm-hmm. I mean, we actually had I think it's fortunate. Others might think it's not so, but we had the opportunity to hold her with her last breaths, or trying breaths. She had no lungs, basically. And so, where that was a wonderful experience there, it was tremendously painful, and I also would never want anybody else to have to experience that. So when I get passionate about March of Dimes, I'm passionate from a personal level, but also in order to try to see what can we do to eliminate this problem in the future. And there's so many great things being done out there right now.
Yeah. What is some of the awareness that March of Dimes is doing to bring the community up to speed on what's going on?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that March of Dimes. One, they're a continuous effort. They provide education benefits. They reach out to businesses. They help businesses educate their employees that are pregnant, and helping them learn and know where to go. But their big capstone event every year is the March for Babies. And almost every regional area has a March for Babies about this time of year. And, everybody seems to have a march. You're marching for life, you're marching for this, you're marching for that. But March of Dimes is actually one of the original walks for charity, all the way back to, like we were talking about in the beginning. And so it still is a great event, and we ask the public to come out and form teams, come out and just march for the babies. And they're usually a 5K walk, and our local one here in the Space Coast is going to be at Lori Wilson Park in Cocoa Beach on April 29th at 5 p.m. So we're going to actually go out and stroll on the beach. Nice. And and we'll have all kinds of supporters there. There's some great local companies, and nationwide there's some great companies that really come out and support. Locally here, one of our biggest fundraisers is Publix supermarkets, and for the week of the march, they're going to ask every single person that checks out, would you be interested in donating to March for Dimes? And I know a lot of people go, oh man, I always get that. Would you give this? Would you give that? And I know. But if you know the cause and you know that, chip in a buck. Yeah, and again, it's for the babies. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the March of Dimes walk is a signature event, and they're happening all over the country this year. And I encourage everybody to type in marchforbabies.org and check it out and find one that's local to them, and maybe even form their own team.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, and we can be a part.
Yeah,
we can, if it's small or big, whatever, we can still have a part in that. So, going back to Molly, I was thinking that when you was talking, do you feel that you're speaking for her, that when you're standing or when you're doing your campaigning or you're out there cheering, do you feel that, this is Molly's voice?